Alright, so again, for 23 and 24, we're just solving these right triangles. And remember, that just means we're finding all angles and we're finding all sides. So here's our triangle DEF. DEF. So we just want to find the measure of angle E, or sorry, the measure of angle D, measure of angle E, measure of angle F. And then we want to find all sides. So we want to find DE, EF, and FE. Remember, for me, I just put them in that order because it's alphabetical. There's no other rhyme or reason to it. But we notice something vastly different about this triangle. We notice we still have some things, like we still have the 90-degree angle, which is E. We still have some sides, so DE is 1.25 and DF is, or FD rather, is 3. But we notice we have two sides and we don't have any angles. Well, if we don't have any angles, we know we just find that third side with Pythagorean theorem. We need to know which one is our C, right? So in a squared plus b squared equals c squared, the 3 is going to be our C because it's our hypotenuse. And then the other ones can just go wherever. So I'm going to call that a squared plus 1.25 squared. So a squared equals, or a squared plus 1.25 squared is 1.5625 equals 9. So I'm just going to subtract that from 9. And we get a squared equals 7.4375. And then we just square root to get a. Square root to get a. So a equals 2.73 when we round to the nearest hundredth. So 2.73 meters. And now that we have our other side, we just need to find the angles. So if we're starting from F, we want to find angle F. Already I know that I need to do the inverse because I'm doing the angle, so I need to do the inverse. But starting from angle F, I only want to use what they give me. We already decided this is H, this is the hypotenuse, but from angle F, 1.25 meters is the opposite side. It's the opposite side. So if we have opposite and hypotenuse, well, we're going to do sine. Sine. So the sine of F is the opposite, 1.25, over the hypotenuse, over 3. Well, and then like we just said, we're just going to do the inverse to get the angle, because angle inverse. So F is sine -1, or inverse sine, of 1.25 over 3. And now that we have F alone, we just plug it in. So we just do second sine of 1.25 divided by 3. We get this thing, 24.62431835. But we want to round to the nearest degree. So we get 25. F equals 25 degrees. All right, and now because we calculated this, we don't want to just subtract from 180 or subtract from 90. Instead, we're going to use another SOHCAHTOA or another trig ratio to find angle D. Now from angle D, 3 is still the hypotenuse, but from angle D, this 125 is actually adjacent. It's actually adjacent. So if we have adjacent and hypotenuse, we're using the cosine of D. The cosine of D is 1.25 over 3. And since we're finding an angle, we're going to do the inverse. So the inverse cosine of 1.25 over 3. Notice we're just going to put that into our calculator as well. So second cosine of 1.25 divided by 3, that equals 65.3, which rounds to 65 degrees. Perfect, and that's our answer. So now looking right next door at number 24, we notice already the same thing. We have the two sides. So we're going to solve for that third side right off the bat. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Well, the c is over here. It's the hypotenuse. That's c. So these other two can go in either order. So I'm going to do 0.75 squared plus 3.5 squared and set it equal to c squared. Well, 0.75 squared is 0.5625, and 3.5 squared is 12.25, and that equals c squared. Then we're just going to add those together. We get 12.8125 equals c squared. Square root to find c. And we get 3.58 when we round to the nearest hundredth. So 3.58 is that side over there, that last side. So we have a triangle STU. So ST is that C part, is 3.58 yards. So TU and then US. TU is 0.75 yards and US is 3.5 yards. So now that we have all of our side lengths, we need to go ahead and find our angle measurements. So they already gave us U, which is 90 degrees, but we need to find T first, for instance. Well, to find angle T, we're just using what they gave us. From angle T, that's opposite and that's adjacent. So we're using tangent. Tangent is opposite and adjacent. So we're using the tangent of T equals the opposite, 3.5, over the adjacent, 0.75. And if we're finding an angle, we're doing inverse. So inverse tangent, and T equals the inverse tangent of 3.5 over 0.75. Now we just plug that into our calculator. So second tangent of 3.5 over 7.5, I'm sorry, 0.75. And that's 77.9 or 78 when we round. 78 degrees when we round. So the measure of angle T is 78 degrees. And now we need to find the measure of angle S. Now from S, I'm actually going to put a box around this one. From S, 3.5 is actually the adjacent, and 0.75 is actually the opposite. So we're still doing tangent, but notice that we're flipping it because we're doing the other angle. So the tangent of S is opposite, 0.75, over adjacent, 3.5. And then we're just doing inverse tangent because we're finding an angle. So S is the inverse tangent of 0.75 over 3.5. And we just type that into our calculator. Second tangent of 0.75 divided by 3.5. And that equals 12.0, which rounds to 12 degrees. So measure of angle S is 12 degrees.